Hello and welcome back to the Sports Brief Podcast. Colton Hall coming at you live. Got a big show for you tonight. Obviously, joined by my side, we've got Kory Foss. Mr. Foss, I appreciate you coming on. Kory Foss plays for the Cologne Chaos. Had to give a quick shout out to the Cologne Chaos because of Ethan Volber being one of our biggest fans. Then also one of my best friends from high school, Mr. Shane the Jam Herman. How you doing, big guy?
Good. How about yourself, Colt?
Still kicking. I can't complain. Got my health. Part of my beauty. I don't know. So let's kind of shuffle off into here. We're gonna actually talk about quite a bit tonight, and it's gonna really start with the Twins and the Vikings because I'm a Twins fan, but I'm not like as serious as Kory over here. Kory probably knows probably about everything. Shane, I know that you don't really follow professional baseball. That's perfectly fine. Let's kind of go into this though, and it's gonna start with actually the Twins offense because I think that's gonna be kind of the key going into October for him. Kory, I'm gonna let you kind of go off of this because I don't think we could do it any other way. So what about the kind of going in there? We put the home run record as something to talk about. What do you think about the offense going forward for the Twins?
It's been the story of the season, I guess, and it's kind of it's odd. It's very anti-Twins, everything that we've been used to. As long as the Twins have always been a defensive pitching type of team, and I think they've been out-homered 26 the last 27 years by their opponents, and they set the all-time home run record on August 31st. So it's been an unreal year with home runs and things like that, but runs scored, and they're like plus 100 right now. I think home runs against opponents. I guess kind of what everybody's talking about, I'm trying to figure out with this, and it looks like it's going to carry them into the postseason. Their magic number is 7 tonight as they start their game. But in October, when all of a sudden you're facing in a short series, the first round being a 5-game series, best winner of 3 first. How much is we depending on how you see it's probably gonna be the Astros, the Yankees at this point. Both of which have great pitching, and Severino coming back too with the Yankees yesterday. That's one more arm for them. But can that take you, as far as, I guess, to kind of ask the question of football too, right? So defense wins championships. Can an offensive, get you a title too? So can they outslug somebody? I think it'd be interesting to see the Twins and the Yankees go into Yankee Stadium, and Twins have hit 283 home runs now, and I think the Yankees are 282 or something like that. Yep. So in that small ballpark, it could get fun to watch. But who's going to have the people in the bullpen, fifth inning on, that's going to be able to stem the tide a little bit and shut somebody down?
I do think the kind of thing that I was one of my good buddies, Brant McCall, who I went to PC with. He's actually from the New York area. Loves the Yankees. I'm pretty sure he would probably want to be buried in their stadium if at all possible. But if Brant was listening, I appreciate you, big guy. But the thing about the Yankees that I always really look for is how Aaron Judge is playing. He's not killing it this year in terms of Aaron Judge being, but honestly, that's probably because they're not really throwing it like they're throwing a lot of balls because they know it's Aaron Judge. You're not going to try to throw most of the time. You're not going to try to hum one down the middle with Aaron Judge because it's. He's going to homer on you every time. He's going to send that one into outer space. So that's the one thing I look out for with the Yankees. The rest of their team, I don't know the Yankees very well, but my buddy Brent will tell you from the last couple of years, their hitting has been pretty solid. So as far as offensively, I had 3 reasons, that I think from an offensive perspective, I believe the Twins can keep to move forward because they've done it all season. And I don't think that's going to change, especially I thought maybe when they first started, I believe it was August or July or August when they kind of really started getting hot. I can't remember when the time frame was. We were covering baseball all summer. I was busy. And I think they were getting hot. And I remember watching it, and I'm thinking, okay, the key is like in October. That's when it really matters because, obviously you got to win games to get there in the first place. But I'm thinking, okay, can they stay hot in order to be able to, put up 7, 8, 9, 10 runs when it really matters? And I think they're going to be able to. There's a lot of I think there's a lot of promise with them coming up. The thing, though, and this is really with all sports, it's not just with baseball. I think you can't get complacent. I think you can't, and that's kind of hard with baseball because the one thing I've noticed just covering it this last summer, you never know what's going to happen. Like I remember I was covering the Cologne Chaos one game, and I think they picked up their first win that game, and I think for the majority of it they were down by 5-6 runs or something. But all of a sudden they came storming back. Jacob Beckers came in and sealed the deal for him. I think it was an RBI single or sacrifice fly out. Anyway, in baseball, you never know what's going to happen. So that's the one thing is just the Twins got to know that anything can happen at any time. And this is another thing I wanted to kind of point out. And this was back in the 2009. I'm going to bring the Vikings into this because I'm wearing a Teddy Bridgewater, jersey because I love my dude. And I think that it's going to be kind of the thing for the Twins. The Twins aren't horrible offensively in any stretch in the imagination. I think that it's going to come down to high scoring and average offense. High scoring and offense and average defense at best. You score a lot of points, hold them. You score more points than them, you win the game. That's what I remember back in 1998 when the Vikings had Randy Moss, Jake Reed, Chris Carter, Robert Smith. Thank you. And they had Randall Cunningham. Like, it's simple. You score more points than them, you win. It's pretty out there. So I don't think that it's that hard to go from. Do you think I'm wrong in that in any way?
Baseball's a different sport, and well, that didn't work out for the Vikings in '98 either. But baseball's definitely a different sport.
It was Morton Anderson, though. Like, let's be real. Like, that really wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Still haven't forgiven Gary Anderson for that.
Gary Anderson, not Morton. That was a Falcons kicker. My bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Baseball's a different sport, and I think it's not like hockey. You see 8 seeds go in and win a Stanley title because it just takes a hot goalie. Things like that. You need more than 1 or 2 guys, and especially in the bullpen in a short series like that. So the Twins, every 162 games is a long time. That's a long season, and you're going to go through stretches where things are going great and stretches where it's not. And I think the Twins have kind of weathered those storms that happen in a regular baseball season better than they have in a long time. They have 93 wins going into tonight with 11 games left, and only one Twins team since 1961 has won 100 games or more. So they've done some things that Twins teams haven't done in the past. But also, in the last few years, I don't think that we've gone into an October with 3 teams that just look like juggernauts right now, with the Astros, the Yankees, and then the Dodgers on the other side. It's been more wide open, and I think because of that, everybody kind of puts their stock in the Yankees and the Astros, and probably, understandably so, but the Twins have kind of been the forgotten team in the mix right now, and I think, depending on what you read, or they're not that discussed right now among national, media and things like that, which I think is a mistake, and as a Twins fan, as someone that's watched of those 150 games they've played so far, probably 148 of them. You like to see them get a little bit of recognition for what they've done, because it has been pretty incredible. But the whole year, and then we're just last night's game that they played was kind of a great example of every time someone's kind of counted them out and say, well, here come the Indians. The Indians are supposed to win it going away before the season started, and that was kind of what they had to overcome. And they've, I think, they had an 11.5 game lead, I want to say, in June, and by the end of July, the Indians had taken the lead a half game. So that 11, it was pretty amazing to watch how quickly that went. And so everybody said, well, there we go. The Indians finally did what they were supposed to do, and now they're long gone. And they fought back, and they've been pushing, and keeping them at bay. And the 2 games they won in Cleveland the other night were just amazing. Just huge. Probably the 2 biggest games, the Twins have played in 9 years, the last time they won the division. But, yeah, so I don't think you can count them out. I think they got a good mix of young players, old, veteran guys. Nelson Cruz is a big help, I think, with some of those young guys. But, yeah, maybe it's just a Twins fan of me, but I think that people probably shouldn't overlook them going into it. And I know every Twins fan is hoping and praying that's not the Yankees, because they've been their Twins' downfall for the last decade and a half. But I think they probably match up with them better at this point. The Astros have 3 guys coming out of there with Garrett Cole and Verlander, and it's just and now Greinke, that it's gonna be tough to beat those 3. And I think maybe they stand a little bit better chance outslugging somebody.
Do you and Shane, I'll let you talk because you look like you're buzzing with anticipation right now. Would you kind of rather have a team that's insanely hot than kind of go into kind of a medium streak to kind of save it for the October, or would you really have a team, because you've coached baseball how long, like the 10 years at least, right?
It's been a while.
It's been a while. So
it's been a while.
I'm not going to bring. I don't want to make you sound old. But like the thing is, and the thing that I've noticed in the very short amount of time that I've covered baseball, I would much rather have a team that's pretty consistent, not too hot, not too cold, but kind of going into it in October. I think you want a team that was, I don't want to say inconsistent, but you want to have a team, in my opinion, that could get the job done at any given moment. The Twins, I think, have been able to do that the entire time because they've been hot. And there's some, obviously, you can have games where it's cold too, but they haven't actually been like real cold. They've been pretty consistent. As a coach, what do you like? Do you want a team that's going to be pretty hot throughout the year, or do you want to, and then kind of have a low right before the big ball? Because then again, when you go into the game that matters or games that matter, you don't know what's going to happen. Or would you rather really have a team that's pretty consistent?
It's like I said, 162 games whether in major leagues or with Legion where we play 30 games. It's hard to stay hot for that long. And so I think kind of what you always say, and I say it as a basketball coach too, is that you want to be playing your best baseball right as the end of the season hits. In other sports the same way. The NBA, they talk teams that are free and clear and they're going to have the number 1 seed with the 2 weeks to go and they rest everybody and they come out flat. There is a truth to that, I guess. The Twins' magic number is 7. If they clinch within the next few days, what are they going to do? They've been beat up for a while, and it is important to get guys healthy. But you don't want guys coming off the bench in game 1 that haven't played for a week and a half. You don't want that. So, But yeah, I think as a coach, you don't necessarily need to be coming in blistering, but you need to be coming in playing your best ball. So that's kind of what I would look for, at least.
Shane, what about you, big guy? Do you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I can't really speak to the baseball portion of that, but I would agree with Kory. In any given sport, you kind of use that first, part of the season, build confidence, figure out your problems, maybe figure out what your problems are actually, and then that later part of the season, playing your best, getting hot. Building confidence, going into that postseason, knowing you're ready, for anyone that comes your way.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I just feel like I'm a Vikings fan. That's really the only thing I can compare this to. Back in 2017, there was a time when the Vikings were like really hot, and then they went into kind of the playoffs in kind of a cold streak and they lost. I'm not saying that there's a correlation or something that you can I guess compare the two, but I don't know. I would much rather have a team that kind of has been able to have both stay hot and kind of cold. Not because you don't want to, obviously. There's a point where Kory said you're not going to be able to stay hot for the entire time. So I feel like you need to have both. I feel like having a team that has had both the good and bad days, I like that rather than having a team. And you know what? It correlates with having a team that plays their best baseball going into the stuff that actually matters. What about we're going to talk about the pitching and bullpen.
I guess one thing I'll add to that relating to football is, correct me if I'm wrong, but 2010 was the last time the Packers won the Super Bowl. I think they had a record of 10-6 or something like that. A little bit of a rocky start, but ended up playing their best football when it mattered, especially the defense. The next year, 2011, the Packers were undefeated until the last game of the season, I believe, where they played Kansas City, or maybe the second to last, and then went and lost in the first round of the playoffs. So I think that's just something to be said that, the hot teams are winning leading up to the postseason and really putting it together.
Yeah.
Well, there was a couple of years ago now. It's been that, I don't know, the Colorado Rockies were, I don't remember what it was. I was just looking at a post from a while back, a couple of years, but they won 21 of their last 22 games to get into the postseason. It's never been done. It was unbelievable, and they came in and just literally blistered through the first, swept the first round, swept the second round, got to the World Series because they won in 4 games, and the other one went 7. They sat around for a while. Mm-hmm. And that was the Boston beat them that year, I think, in 5 games in the World Series. So, but you can get hot in anything, I guess. But football, there's a lot of parity there, whether you're playing great or playing, not playing well. It's any given Sunday. I know that's a cliche, but probably more so than any other sport, there's more parity. Like I said, with hockey, you get a hot goalie. With baseball, got a guy that can come in and shut somebody down for 7-8 innings. Basketball, one or two guys that are, otherworldly, and it doesn't matter who else is on the court. So
yeah, unless you're the Lakers, my Lakers, and not LeBron. They have AD, so I'm not really. That's talk for another time. But what about the bullpen for the Twins? I mean, my thing is just kind of damage control, because the Twins have been. I mean, what they broke the home run record. So I mean, I think their goal for them is really just do what you've done in offensively. Like I said, high scoring offense, average defense. I know that it didn't work for the Vikings, and we're haunted by that probably until we die. But I still think that that's a pretty good. If you got a hot offense. And obviously, yeah, you're gonna have bad days, but to me, if you can play average to pretty good defense and score a lot of points, you're gonna probably win most of your games. But as far as the bullpen, it's I read an article the other day that said the resurgence with the Twins bullpen, that they made a case. They had I can't remember, it's like 2-point-something ERA. And it was something that I'm a big stats guy, so I was kind of looking at it, and I didn't know if I agreed with it, because again, it wasn't going in October. It was from August.
It was 348 since they're at 348 since August 1st, is what they're, which is it was fourth in the major leagues and tops in the American League, and that's
maybe I read that wrong. I don't remember.
That's as good as they've been in a long time. They were a huge weakness early on in the year. And they went out of the trade deadline and picked up Romo from Miami, which was huge because he's a veteran. He's a World Series champion. Was with San Francisco, and things have kind of turned around. But for the most part, it's turned around with guys that are within the organization, which is great. But just like the offense, they have Twins pitching has an entirely new mindset. Now it's, instead of let's hit corners and let's do those kind of things, it's let's throw the ball as hard as we can for one inning. And it's amazing that, as if you're your starting pitcher, you can throw, say you throw 91, 92 or whatever, you got to do that for 5 or 6 innings. You might be able to ramp it up to 95, 96, but you can't do that for 6, 7 innings. Well, all of a sudden you're in the bullpen now. I can throw as hard as I want now. So you see guys that have come in and thrown really hard compared to what they have. Brett Hall, the young kid that came up, the 21-year-old that threw 103 miles an hour in the minor leagues, and he had a great outing or whatever the other nights. And Cleveland came in and got the win. Actually, threw 8 pitches, I think 100 miles an hour and over. And he's a big dude, and doesn't even look like he's throwing the ball that hard. But so that's been a big help. But some teams now in the major, it's just in the last couple of years. The Rays kind of started 2 or 3 years ago, where they would have what they call the bullpen day or whatever, and they would have it would just be bullpen pitchers. They would start with one of their bullpen. He might go 1 or 2 innings. He might go 1 inning, and then they go on from there. And the Twins ended up doing that in game 2 of that massive doubleheader the other night against the Indians. I'd never seen that before. The Twins had never done anything like that before, but they were out of pitch. With it kills the Twins. They lost a pitcher to PEDs or whatever.
Pineda. Is he a big loss? He's obviously a big loss. I feel like if they had him, I feel like that their chances of winning in October are just skyrocketed. He's a big loss.
He had been, probably for the previous month and a half, he had been their best pitcher. So it was huge, and that kind of threw everything for a loop. All of a sudden, and we already had Gibson was already hurting. He was out for a while, so there's 2 of your 5 starters. And Barrios has struggled for the last month or so, and he's done that the last couple of years late in the season, and you wonder if just spent or whatever. His last outing was pretty good there tonight, but the bullpen day was incredible to watch. I think they went through 5 pitchers and they shut them out. It's 2-zip, and so reading today in the Star Tribune, the Minneapolis paper, the talk is, well, what are they going to do in a 5-game series? And their case was, at least, is that they start Barrios. I think that's kind of the consensus. They'll start him in game 1 and then have a bullpen day and then throw Odorizzi and then have a bullpen day and then throw Barrios again.
Okay.
Which that doesn't mean that that's what they're going to do, but I think everybody's kind of on board with this all of a sudden now, because holy cow, they shut out the Indians 2-zip and using 5 pitchers, and I mean it was pretty cool to watch. And sometimes when something weird like that works, everybody's like, oh, let's run with it, and I think just because it worked it doesn't mean it's something that they need to, I think, plan for 2-3 times in a series. But when you're hurting as bad as they are for starting pitching, and they are, you need some of those bullpen guys to step up in whatever way, I guess it is.
Do you think with the resurgence, obviously that's got to be pretty? I feel like it's kind of encouraging, kind of going into October where it actually all matters. I'm not saying that the Twins are going to win it, but I'm encouraged by seeing that the way that they replay. I don't remember what article I read, but I'll have to look that up again and show you, because I just read about that even though they lost Pineda, the fact that the bullpen just gives them that much more of a chance. They got a shot. Like, you can't really say, if you have a really high scoring offense in any sport, and then in your defense, and then obviously with pitching, it's if you got a high scoring offense in any sport, you've got a really good shot. As long as your defense isn't god awful. Like, I think, what was it, back in 2000? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It was like 2010, 2011. Like, the Vikings defense was awful. They got good. Well, they weren't good necessarily. It was because Adrian Peterson ran for like 2,000 yards, and they probably spent the majority of the time on offense because all they did was run the football. But it was like that 2013 year. They were like 31st in the NFL in most touchdown passes allowed. I think they had 34 allowed passing touchdowns, and but then their offense wasn't awful. I mean, Christian Ponder was. That was awful. But I mean, they had Adrian Peterson, so it wasn't like they had to do a whole lot. But then Mike Zimmer came in and obviously changed that whole aspect of things. But I think I think they can still do something, especially with the way that this bullpen has kind of come around. You got anything to add, Shane? I'm sorry.
I don't.
Okay. What about young players for the Twins? I actually pointed out Luis Arias.
Arias, yep.
Arias. I can never say his last name.
Yeah, some of those ones are fun.
He hasn't been in any stretch of imagination. Like, I think it was it's either late or early August. He really started to, like, I really noticed him.
He's been hit for a long time. He's been kind of an anomaly. He was in they called him up from Double-A. He skipped Triple-A, and it was just out of a necessity. He's hitting 354 still. And he's not going to qualify for the batting title, but he has over 300 at bats this year, so he's doing it consistently. And it's amazing to watch because you keep waiting for the kid to come back down to earth. And he had 3 hits last night again, and even a night they struggled. So it's hard to take him out of the lineup. He's not the greatest. He plays second a little bit. He's not the greatest defensively. He's had to play the outfield a little bit when people are hurt. But he's probably been the biggest young kid that's made an impact, at least, I guess, at this point in time. So they got a couple young guys coming up in the bullpen, but they haven't really had a big impact quite yet.
What about young players for you? Who really do you think is going to be, in a way, like, they're probably going to be the difference? They could be a big difference. I'm not going to say the difference, but like they could be a big difference going into the World Series.
I guess if you kind of worked your way around, it depends on how you define young. Byron Buxton he's every year we wait for it. He was a consensus #1 prospect for 3 years in a row in the minors, and he'd figure some things out this year, I think, offensively, but his defense is unbelievable. That changes everything having him out of there. Not that we'd have, Kepler does a nice job in center when he's out there, but there's nobody like Byron Buxton, and so losing him, it was really a huge impact. I think they weathered that all right, but Sano, you could still consider him young. He was basically the equivalent of Joe Mauer for, he had so much, people got so angry at him when they didn't need to be so angry at him, because he wasn't producing like they wanted him to produce, and he was a young kid or whatever. And he was injured a little bit and probably came in overweight a couple times, but he's been a huge impact guy. He had his 30th home run last night, and I think it went 694 feet. It was unbelievable. It was a dinger, yeah. But he was and that makes him the 5th Twin to hit 30 or more home runs this year, which is a major league record. So that kind of tells you they don't have one guy that's hitting 65 home runs. They have 5 guys that are in the 30s right now. Yeah. So, but I mean, if you kind of work your way around, Rosario, he's still younger, and he's so streaky. But if he's on, he had 3 home runs in 2 games the other day in Cleveland. When he's on, he's scary. When he's off, he's not. He swings at anything that's anywhere near the plate up there, which gets him into trouble sometimes. But a couple of the pickup players they got this year could play. CJ Chrome's done a pretty good job. He's been hurt recently. which has affected him a little bit. But Polanco started the All-Star game this year. He's been their most consistent player probably all the way through, the healthiest at least, hitting 300, and he's kind of been around that all year, that 300 mark. I think he's right on the money, 300 right now for tonight. But he's had some lapses in defense, and that's kind of been what people have questioned about him so far this year. But I think if he shores that up, he's gonna. Your shortstop and your center fielder, two guys are going to anchor your defense, so it's important to have people there that you can count on. So and I think he's figured some things out. He struggled his throw a little bit. That was kind of what it was, not like a Chuck Knobloch situation where you just couldn't throw the ball to the base, no matter what it was. He just arm angle and some stuff like that. And I think he's figured some of that stuff out, so which is good. But and then you have Garver behind the plate, which is that's probably been the biggest surprise. And he has 30 home runs, and he averages more home runs per at bat than anybody in the majors this year.
Here's the thing. It's funny you mentioned Joe Mauer. My college head football coach played high school ball with Joe Mauer. And I was like, oh man, that's cool, because they both played quarterback. And I think Joe Mauer, for baseball and football, I think he was one of the only athletes to ever do it. Like, he was the Gatorade Player of the Year for both of them, I think. And it's funny, I told him, I was like, so did you get to play a little bit? And he goes, no, because Joe Mauer was the National Gatorade Player of the Year. I didn't play quarterback at all. And then I think, where did Joe Mauer go? Like Florida or something like that? Florida State or something?
That was who he had accepted an offer from, but then he was the number 1 overall pick that year. He was a year older than me, so I could see him pretty much. We played in the Minneapolis area, and you kind of see those growing up, those teams and stuff like that. But he was on a different level, obviously, than everybody else. The Gatorade National Player in football, and then the number 1 baseball pick. He was an all-state basketball player, and I always said like God needed to divvy some of that up because the dude's only going to use so much of that. But he was. We didn't like him. He was, just when you grow up with kids like that, you tend to, not that there's anything wrong with them, you just maybe a little jealousy or a lot of jealousy, I guess. But
But I think that's. I like telling people that, my not that I did anything but amazing, but my college coach, went to high school, Joe Mauer. Like, I get something great out of that. Like, no, I don't. But what about? I was gonna mention Randy Dobnak, but I'm not even gonna go into that because it's just part of that Twins bullpen. Just got the ball out. What about? I'm sorry, Shane. Anything for you to add?
No, you're good.
Okay. Team leaders. I wrote 3 guys down: Max Kepler, Jose Barrios, and Nelson Cruz. I picked Max Kepler because just from the stats perspective, again, I'm a huge stat guy. I'm a nerd in some aspects of that. But Kepler, I don't believe he's leading the team in home runs, but he's pretty close. Like you said, they have like 5 guys in that 30 home run range.
Cruz has 37 and Kepler has 36 right now.
And I think, he's going to be kind of a guy, obviously not leading the team, but anyway, I just think he's going to be huge. His performance is going to be huge. Kind of going into the stretch of October again. This Twins offense, I would just really hope magic number 7. I hope just get anywhere from 7, 8, 9, 10. I would prefer 10 to be honest with you because I think that scoring that amount of points would just kind of take out any errors or just give them the biggest and best chance to win the whole thing. I don't know, but I'm just hoping that the entire offense, and then obviously Jose Barrios. I keep saying Barrios for the long time.
It's Barrios. You got it right.
Barrios. Yeah. Okay. I think that obviously, like you said, struggled a little bit towards the end of the season here, but got to buckle up, Cowboy. This is the big stuff. So, and then Nelson Cruz, also another guy. I looked at his hitting stats. He's not like not one of the team leaders, I don't believe, but he's still a guy that still contributes a lot. I think what he had like 22 home runs. I can't remember the exact number, but he's not 30 home runs. I don't think.
Nelson Cruz.
Yeah,
he's leading the team. He's got 37.
You just said that. I'm sorry. But I was looking at it. Who was I can't remember because I was looking at the stats for the Twins yesterday, and there was a guy who had 22 home runs, and I'd heard him about him a lot and did some looking up. I can't remember. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. What about you for team leaders?
If you're going to go by age and experience, then it's got to be Nelson Cruz. He's 39 years. He's a freak of nature, really. If it was 10 years ago, we would have said that he was on steroids, but you don't get away with that anymore. But he's just, I think, watching the dynamics and stuff like that, it seems like a lot of people gravitate towards him, which is a good thing. They don't have, a lot of guys that have been around for a long time, especially on the pitching staff. And that's okay. I've always been one where your team dynamic matters more than having one guy at the top that's gonna take control of everything. My favorite player of all time, Torii Hunter, he was kind of that. He led by example too in that same sense. But especially when they were, he came back and the Twins were very young. All those guys that are a couple years older now, but I don't know. I'm just going around thinking. But yeah, they don't have a lot of guys with a lot of experience, especially postseason experience. The guys that have been in the Twins organization their whole career have one game, postseason experience. They lost the wild card game to the Yankees 2 years ago, but so it's just leaning on guys that you trust to do their job, that are out there and have done a steady thing. I think Kepler's needs to be there. He's been out. He's been he's been fighting at a couple different things. He hasn't played since the second game in Cleveland, and so the hope is that they can wrap this up in enough time to take a little bit of the drama out of it and let some of those guys that need to get healthy. We talked about whether you want to be hot or whatever. As much as you want to be playing well, you need to be healthy. If you're not healthy, then how you're playing doesn't matter. Besides aside from that. So, but yeah, I think they have a nice balance for people. Like I said, with leaders, I don't think there's one guy that everybody leans on, and but you can just see it. You look at all the great teams in any sport. Football teams that win titles and basketball and stuff, they're having a good time. They enjoy each other and they know whose job it is to do this and do that. So yeah, you can see it all year that they've had a good time and they definitely have a great dynamic in there. So I think they'll be all right.
And this kind of goes all into this. Young leaders and everything, kind of banding the team together. The question is, and I texted you this a couple days ago, and you gave a very Vikings fan answer about it. You said, obviously as a fan, if you're being a realist, you think no, but it was the fact that as a fan, you hope so. As a Vikings fan, I've learned that I really started following the Vikings back in 2007, 2006-ish. When I was
you haven't been through it then. You haven't been through half of it.
No, I haven't been as through it bad of as you. I remember always telling my dad, and I was always talking to my dad. I was like, Dad, this is the year. It was like 2009 when they got Brett Favre. I was going off, man. I was like, yes, they're going to the NFC Championship game. They're going to win against the Saints. Brett Favre is not going to screw us over. And he didn't, because he was really the main reason we were there in the first place, because the Vikings defense was not that was not even close to how good their offense was. And I've been through a little bit of the pain, the 2009, then 2017, but not like 1998, like that bad. The missed field goal by Gary Anderson, that was obviously infamous. But I think you gave a very Minnesota Vikings fan answer with it. You're like, obviously you hope so as a fan, but you're real about it. No, you gave me that answer. You said no, they don't think you don't think they can. I am a Vikings fan through and through, and I was beaten to believe by my dad, not actually beaten, that once that clock hits 0, then they win. But until that moment, they didn't. That you pray for the best, but you expect the worst. That's what I've learned to do as a Minnesota fan.
Yeah, I think with this. Where they're at right now with the magic number being 7 and stuff, 11 games left. They have a 5-game lead. They won that second game in Cleveland the other night to give them a 5.5 game lead, and there were still 13, and everybody was like, it's done. Mm-hmm. It's over. There's no way. And talking about the postseason and stuff like that, I'm not going to celebrate anything until that number is 0. I don't care. As the numbers, they have to go, like if the Twins go 5 and 6 over these last, they need to have to go like 11 and 1 or something like that, mm-hmm. which isn't very realistic, but not until it's 0. And I'm not saying anything. And that is a Minnesota sports thing. I think when you've been through the ringer like we have with all of our sports, the Twins won 91. That was the last time a major, one of the 4 major teams won it. That's I don't know why that doesn't get more discussion around the country about how we talk about Cleveland and Boston. Well, Boston wins 3 titles every year in a sport, it seems like, but they're the ones that suffer apparently. In Chicago and all those guys. But we've been through the ringer, that's for sure. The Vikings. Yeah, you haven't lived half of it. I was I was in middle school in the 98 season or whatever, and that happened, and it was the same thing. There was a song. That was the year that Will Smith song came out. I'm going to Miami or whatever it was, and they redubbed it for the Vikings that were going to Miami, and this is halfway through the season or whatever, and everybody's celebrating, and they're averaging 100 points a game, so no one's going to beat them, obviously, and even at that age, I knew, like, I was like, this, you got to be careful here, and the field goal happened, and it was just kind of a surreal feeling, even at that age. They kicked a bunch of stuff away, and Anderson gets up to kick the field goal, and he's 41 for 41 at that point in the year, which had never happened before.
Only kick he misses.
Yeah, and I knew, even at that age, I knew. I'm like, this is gonna go wide left. I mean, I just had it in my brain. The same thing. The Seahawks playoff game. He's gonna miss this field goal. But that's a Minnesota Vikings fan, mindset or whatever. And I don't think we're ever gonna get over that until they win one. But yeah, I mean, it's not. There's nothing in stone.
Yeah.
There just isn't, and that's why. I gave you the answer that realistically on paper, probably no. The Twins don't have a great shot, but. They've won 93 games, I mean, they've done it all year long, and just because they're, don't have the pitching, probably at least the starting pitching that some of those other teams do, and October's a funny month, it just is, and like I said, but there's no celebrating or planning anything ahead of time for a Minnesota sports fan.
No,
there just isn't. So we've been through enough, I think, and. I'm still convinced that Favre came back to screw the Vikings, even to this day. I mean, throwing across your body back to the middle of the field, that just, that was a very Favre thing to do. But no,
I cried. I'm a grown man. I'll admit I cried.
But what I remember vividly about that game is, one, there was a huge storm, so our DirecTV kept going in and out in the middle, and it was just panic mode. So I went into my truck and was listening to the game in the radio in the garage when Peterson fumbled the ball or whatever going into halftime. And so they were coming, and I was watching with my wife. I don't know how she was watching with me because I'm just a nightmare to be around, given those situations. But, they had the 7-point lead, and they're driving down the field. And I looked at her, I'm like, oh, my God, they're going to do it. It was just, holy cow, this is actually going to happen. Ryan Longwell's going to kick a field goal, and they're going to go to the Super Bowl. And that was the first time I was really like, wow. And, Favre, man, all I got to do is run the ball out of bounds.
I know.
Let him kick it. So.
I think it was actually Paul Allen, the voice of the Vikings. He literally said about Brett Favre, "What are you doing? Like, this is the Super Bowl. This isn't, I don't remember what the exact quote was. This is the Super Bowl. He literally to go to the Super Bowl." I cried. I was like 7th or 8th grade. I can't remember. I think it was 7th grade because 8th grade they were awful, and 7th grade I kept running back and forth to my room because I didn't want to watch because it was getting to game time. It was getting to the point where it was the entire season was on the line, and I came back just in time to see Brett Favre throw the interception. And the Vikings never even got a chance because defensively they weren't as good as they were offensively. Like, they weren't as explosive. They never made they made some plays here and there. But, sorry, I didn't mean to spit on you.
And they're not winning a coin flip.
No, they're not.
There's no way they win that coin flip. And that was same thing. You knew that was coming too.
Oh, and then I think it was actually when E.J. Henderson broke his femur. Like, I had a sick feeling then since that moment because they had to put Jasper Brinkley in as the starting middle linebacker. And you want to talk about a guy that can't cover? Like, I watched this guy even a little bit in South Carolina. I was shocked. Like, he is a big bruiser. Like, he's a guy that just stumps you. And he actually played for Mike Zimmer a little bit before I think he went to the Cowboys. And I remember thinking when they put him in the 2009 championship game, then I swear to God, we'll get back to the Twins. I was thinking, oh no, because that entire defense, I think it took Breeze 3 plays to get down in field goal range, and then they kicked it and won it. And I went into a very serious depression for about 3 months.
Yeah, I don't remember overtime. I blacked out. I think for most I didn't want to watch it, so I was out. You knew I was going to play out anyways. I didn't have to watch it, but
yeah. But anyway, so that kind of brings us up. Minnesota fans suffering. So I think they got a shot. I know that Here's the thing with the Twins, and here's the thing with any team. It's any given Sunday. It's any given day. I think the Twins got a shot. I don't care. I will bleed purple, and I will bleed anything Minnesota until I die because it was just the fact that all the Minnesota teams are the closest I had. Those are the teams I'm going with. I hope they make it. I hope they win it. It's been a long time. But that's what I believe about it. Let your bats get hot and let your pitches go fast. That's all I got to say about it. But what about teams coming out of the NL? Before we get into this, Christian Yelich, I was actually a big fan of him because, before the actual knee injury, obviously I wouldn't be a fan because of the knee injury, but like I was a big fan because like he had like what 30, 40 home runs just exploding. And you kind of mentioned he kind of I didn't really notice that or know that before he came to Milwaukee. And no, I don't actually hate everything Milwaukee. But before he came to Milwaukee, he was absolutely, I don't think he was that good. And then he came to Milwaukee and absolutely crushed it, according to this guy. And, this year to see him go down like that, I can relate because my senior year, I broke my leg in a similar fashion. And I know kind of what he's going through. Not that I'm talented in any way compared to him, but just the fact of just the knowing the feeling, wow, like my season might be over, for mine, it might've been, but his is definitely over, but it's tough. Like it's a different thing. I had the Milwaukee Brewers coming out, but because they're like in their last 10 games, they're like 9-1 or something, and they were doing pretty good. And I'm thinking, okay, Yelich is the guy. He's finally actually going to give he had a resurgence. He's going to be able to do something, and then he does that. So the Brewers, I think, are basically going to have to scrape. They're still a good team in my opinion, but I just don't think they're going to be able to come out. I think like obviously teams like the Dodgers and Atlanta are too good. And I had those. That's basically who I got. I got 3 out of the 5 teams. I've tentatively still letting Milwaukee in. We'll see. We'll see. But I got the Dodgers, the Atlanta Braves, and the Cubs out of 3 out of the 5 teams ish that are coming out of the NL. And then I think the Twins are obviously going to make it out of the AL. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, the wild card race in the NL is a goofy one right now. I think you can I think we're assuming that Washington is going to be in. They're leading right now, but they're only leading by a game and a half. And then all of a sudden you got Milwaukee, Chicago fighting it out. LA's already in. The wild card's not going to come out of the West either. But St. Louis is only 2.5 games up on Milwaukee and Chicago. So what's going to happen there? I guess I don't watch enough to give a real analysis. But I don't know. Maybe it's the Minnesota in me, but I'm hoping it's not Milwaukee. So sometimes when a big guy big player goes down, teams will rally around that, and they played well since Yelich has come out. They are 9-1 on their last 10 games, which is incredible. And I think the Braves are the other team that nobody's really talking about. They're young and they're fun to watch. I've been able to watch a little bit of them. And I think they could do a little damage. The Dodgers every year Dodgers have won the West 7 years in a row, I think it is, and every year it's like, well, this is their year. They rolled through last year. I don't remember what it was, 108, 110, 112 games, something like that. And I don't know. October's not a great time for them. It's kind of been the Twins on a grander scale, I guess. The Twins. The last time they won a playoff series was 2002 against the A's, and then they got swept out by the Angels that year in the ALCS or whatever, and Adam Kennedy ruined our lives. and they've been a regular through the 2000s. They won 2, 3, 4, 6, 8. No, they lost in the tiebreaker in 8, and then they won 9, 10. And they never got past the first round in all those years, and mostly it was the Yankees. It was the A's once or twice, but so October, you're happy, you're excited that they're getting close now. But just like a Vikings fan, you've been pretty burned. So, but I guess you just kind of got to enjoy it. 2 years ago when they won the wild card, that was out of absolute nowhere. They were the worst team in the majors the year before. Mm-hmm. And when they got into that race or whatever, and they won 85 games and got the second wild card that year. You might not get in with 93 wins this year, 93, 94 wins. You might not make it in. Mm-hmm. And I just said that. I said that when I remember watching them celebrate that, in the locker room the night that they got it. I think they were in Anaheim when it happened, and just saying, I'm just going to enjoy this. Yeah. I'm not going to hang hopes on an 85 win team to go on and win the World Series. This is just really cool to see. Yeah. This team that hasn't done this for a while, and then they went into New York or whatever, and that was an interesting game. They knocked a couple home runs right off the bat, and everybody's on Twitter's blowing up. Oh my God, the Twins are going to beat the Yankees, and it was 4-0 in the first inning. I'm like, there's 8 more innings to go. Yeah, absolutely. And they're playing in a little league ballpark, and they got, it's just, you knew where that was going. But that was the thing. I was just, I told myself I'm just going to enjoy this. I don't know if I've really done that with the Minnesota sports team. You're always kind of, you want them to finish it off or whatever. And I just had a different attitude with that team. So, but I think we can have a little bit higher expectations going into this thing. But like we said before, I think they're getting overlooked, and maybe that'll put a little chip on their shoulder. I don't know.
Yeah. What about the Twins? Do you think? I mean, kind of going back to the Twins. Like, I think that. What do you think it's going to end for them? Since you don't think they're going to win it, what do you think it's going to end for them?
Oh, it's hard to say. It's kind of like.
Hate to jinx you
it's like fantasy football. Like, you don't want to pick a Packers player, but you want, they're the best one available at that point in time. Like I said, Aaron Rodgers is my quarterback, which is just awful to have that happen. But he was the best available, and so I was hoping someday they were going to win. The Vikings were going to win 48-47, and that didn't happen either. So it's kind of anomalous. I mean, you want to, if you're going to realistically look at things, or if you're going to, take the lifelong fans viewpoint of it, I think it's hard to tell because who they're going to get in the first round, because right now New York and Houston both have 99 wins, and so are they going to fight it out? Are they going to both play all the way through to try and get that 1 seed? And whoever, the All-Star game or the World Series home team is no longer decided by the All-Star game, which is the right thing to do. It's decided by the best record. So LA's got 98, they have 99. How much do you think, how much are you going to fight till the last day for that number 1 spot? Are you playing to do that, or you're going to try and rest some people? And so maybe some of those guys, some of those teams spend those pitchers in the days leading up, and maybe that's the way it plays out. But so you never know. I think the Twins this year, we don't play teams out west. You usually get a couple series against them. And they won the season series against Houston. I know they did this year. That was before they got Greinke, but they didn't win the season series with the Yankees, but they won a couple. I think they won 3 or 4 games this year. They didn't win the season series, but so I guess I would say Yankees. I would say that I would like to see them play Yankees, just based on, like I said, the playing in the Little League Park might be just what they need to to get a little bit, and I think with the younger kids they have that haven't been burned by the Yankees, like they were all through the 2000s. Maybe they don't have that in the back of their minds like everybody did, and they'll just come out and play ball. I just think Houston's pitching is probably going to be what gets them there. I think it's probably going to be Houston on the American League. I think I don't. If we're being realistic, I would say it's probably going to be Houston and New York in the ALCS. I think it's going to be I think it'd be a really good series. But I think Houston wins out, because they have better pitching, but they can put up some runs too. They're no slouches on offense. I think out of the NL, I think I'd like to see Atlanta, which is weird to say that. My earliest memories are the 91 World Series, and I have those are some good memories, but I think, I think it's going to come down probably to Atlanta and LA. Atlanta's been really hot for a while now. In LA, they tend to coast a little bit this time of year, and they can because they're going to have the number 1 seed out of the NL. But I would say, if I was, my wager would be right now would be Houston and Atlanta. I guess maybe that's my where I'm at right now, but it could very well be New York and LA, and I think probably Major League Baseball executives are really hoping it's LA and New York.
No kidding.
That'd be probably their biggest moneymaker, but so.
Minnesota team. I'm gonna go bold here. I don't care. I was gonna say Twins win it in 4, but I think they're gonna Twins 4-1. They're gonna win. I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. I'm not gonna make a bold prediction like that because you learn not to do that. Anywho, let's get into the Vikings here because I'm a little bit more at home here. Let's talk a little bit about the kicking issues. Before we do this, I want to hear Shane talk about a little bit about Sunday because he told me a thing a couple days ago. I think it was yesterday, actually. That no, maybe it wasn't. It was Tristan saying that the Vikings were trash. No, they're not Tristan. They're just don't give the ball to Kirk Cousins. That's the only thing that's kind of a bad thing to say when you don't give the ball to your $28 million quarterback. But let me hear what your take was on from Sunday's game because I know you've got some things to say.
So just recapping sort of my emotions going through the game was first quarter, I'm like, oh my God, my 2011 Packers are back. Offense is rolling. Aaron Rodgers is just finding the open man. The only thing that was different was that we had a really good run game going with Aaron Jones. And then Delvin Cook breaks off for a 75-yard run.
Really helped my fantasy team out, by the way. Needed that.
Yeah, I mean, that changes the game completely from, a 21-0 early in the second quarter to, 21-7 with the Vikings. That's a way different game. That's very uncomfortable. And it's like, 2018's back. And it honestly felt like, for me, going throughout the whole game, an exact replay of last year's tie. Just completely out of whack. Both teams giving up big plays, dropping big passes, making bonehead, moves. And ultimately the Packers came out on top, which I'm thankful for, and a win's a win. But man, one or two big plays going the other way, on both sides could have changed the game completely. Realistically, Kirk Cousins should have had one more, if not two more interceptions. And maybe another touchdown or two, that sort of flag on the touchdown to Diggs there.
Delvin Cook, yeah. I was kind of like, I didn't see it. I don't know. They're calling pass interference a whole different way this year.
Yeah, I mean, Initially, I sort of saw what the announcers were seeing, but then looking back, I saw a video after the fact, and when he was halfway into the end zone, he was still blocking the safety or cornerback there. So I could see how they called that one back, but yeah, a play here or there that's different. I say that ball game goes either way, and it just honestly felt a lot like last year's tie to me, where the Packers were up big, playing well, and then they just, made a lot of bonehead moves in scoring positions, turnover on downs, Geronimo Allison fumbling the ball, Aaron Rodgers fumble. But the Packers defense revamped, came through and held on for us, and I know Kirk Cousins' interception in the end zone was a bonehead decision. He should have just thrown that away. But you can't take the credit away from Kevin King on making that play on the ball. That was pretty good body control coming down with that one over Diggs. So yeah. I guess that's what I got to say about the Green Bay Vikings game this time around. I'd like to hear from you guys. I don't know. I haven't really talked sports with anyone for a while. So,
yeah, here's the thing. $84 million. That's all I have to say. Over 3 years, fully guaranteed. Now, I want to rewind it actually back a little bit. We have already mentioned him in the show. Christian Ponder. I believe he was a first-round draft pick, either 11th overall or 12th. I can't quite remember, out of Florida State. 12th overall. A frat boy out of Florida State. And the amount of suffering I had to go through to watch that guy play. And then, before that we went through Brett Favre, we had Donovan McNabb, we had Matt Castle too. Just kind of a quarterback carousel. Wasn't as bad as Cleveland's. They went through 25, 27 quarterbacks, whatever it was. But to get all the way to Kirk Cousins last year, I've openly said it. He's worth the money. He's, I think he's going to come out this year. I can't just leave the guy out in the open. I think he's still worth the money, but here's the thing. The Vikings have to run the football. I don't think they can't let Kirk Cousins throw it 30 to 40 times a game. I just especially with the way their offensive line looked. Their offensive line's looking much better, much improved. Even though, yes, Kirk Cousins did face some pressure with the Packers, but I got to say this to all you Packers fans. The Packers didn't win that game, okay? The Vikings lost that game. There's a difference, okay? And what I mean by is that the Vikings shot. Go ahead.
I'll stop you there though and say this: if the Vikings would have won that game, it's not because the Vikings won that game. It's because the Packers gave away with a 21-0 lead. I mean, that's
okay. I can live with that too.
I mean, think about that scenario, Vikings being 21, they were up 21-0 against Atlanta in week 1. Imagine if they would have, gave up that game.
I probably when the Vikings lose, I don't know if you do this too, but I turn off all my notifications from ESPN. I turn off all my Bleacher Report app because I don't want to hear about the Vikings. I don't want to hear about the fact that they just lost. Like for instance, last year 2 years ago they were on a roll. They just beat Carolina, lost to Carolina. Excuse me. And it was a couple years ago, back in 2009, the Vikings lost to Carolina, and that was their only loss because before that, I think their last loss before was to the Steelers or something. And they had a 5 or 6 game win streak. They were looking good. But then they lost. They went and lost to them. They went and lost to the Bears. They lost to the Cardinals too. And I remember just sitting there, and I didn't check ESPN. I didn't check anything for a couple days because I'm just heartbroken as a Vikings fan. Just give me one Super Bowl. And now, kind of fast forwarding back into the Packers game. The Vikings, they didn't lose that game. The Packers didn't win the game. The Vikings lost it because Kevin Stefanski. I know that maybe you want to boost Kirk Cousins' stats just a bit because maybe get him back to 30 touchdown passes, maybe make it look worthwhile while you wasted $28 million. Nope, didn't waste. I'm not going to say that yet. They did not. They maybe could have got him for less money. But the point is that you probably wanted to pad his stats a little bit and maybe had him roll out. I know it's first and goal. You got 3 other downs to score. But why change the play calling when the entire drive with not only Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattison too, who, by the way, is proving to be a pretty good running back in his first 2 games out of Boise. But I think that he being Kevin Stefanski screwed up. He should have run the ball, scored, then the Vikings, they're up whatever it was, if our kicker can make a field goal. I think then the Vikings go up, just run the ball. Why would you put it in the hands of a guy that I don't think should touch the football more than 30 times a game in terms of passing? The Vikings should hand the ball off. And I know you want to save Alexander Mattison for the season, but at some point you got to realize, Dalvin Cook for the season. Alexander Madison's going to play a big role, but not as much as Dalvin Cook. You got to give the ball to Dalvin Cook this year, who would better rush for 1,000 yards because if he doesn't, I think he's on the way out because of all the injuries and stuff.
I don't think he's trying to pad anybody's stats. I think that sometimes coaches get a little bit, I got to trick them happy. There's a reason that the Patriots have an extra Super Bowl, because of that. You have a, one mentality, they're going to run, they're going to run, they're going to run. Well, I'll catch them off guard and throw a pass here, and, it didn't work for Russell Wilson or any of that, but I think sometimes you try to get a little too cute with those things, but everybody wants to say 28 million. Well, I'll go back. It's kind of a Joe Mauer situation, right? Yeah. I mean, when you give somebody that amount of money, everybody expects the world out of them, and when they don't do it, it's the end of the world. It's the apocalypse. We can't handle. There's something has to change. Something has to happen here. And it's not too early. They say bust. Is he bust or is it too early to tell? I think it's too early to tell. The one thing I do worry about him, though, is he's never won big games.
Mm-hmm.
He's
look at his record. Oh, what's he like? 4-26 against a 500 team or whatever.
It's not good. Late season particularly, and whether that's a personality trait or that's just the situation he's been in with teams or whatever. But that's the thing I think you kind of look at. And everybody, you want to run the ball. I know that was a big thing with Zimmer, obviously. You want to run the ball, and maybe that's because he's 80 years old, but that's not a bad plan. I think, it's not a long-term solution, though, especially in this day and age when players are bigger, stronger, faster, and health issues become more of because of that pop up with running backs, you got to be really careful with him. You got to be really, really careful with Dalvin Cook, and not just because he has a history of injuries, but do you want him, busting it up week 2 or whatever, and maybe hurting himself by carrying the ball 30 times, or do you want to use him in a way that he's there when you need him, but you're still effective, and to do that you got to be able to throw the ball. And the Vikings have been in this mode for a couple of years now, and they were with Sam Bradford, which drove everybody bonkers. But the three and out pass, not looking down the field, and I think Cousins has the ability to do that. If you look back to the Packer game last year, he had that amazing throw, Thielen probably did more work on it, but still, it was pretty impressive to be able to do that, and he has it at times. But I don't know if it's a Zimmer thing or what, or they love to run the ball in the flats. I mean, when Sam Bradford sets the all-time record for passing percentage in a year, they're not running any deep routes. So I think to be really effective with Dalvin Cook in the running, you got to stretch it out a little bit. You have to in the long run. I mean, the play action is just there's no action to it if you're not gonna be able to stretch it out of it. People are gonna stop biting on that, and they're gonna get away. The RPO and stuff like that, which is fine. If you look back, Adrian Peterson was big into that too. He would rather run the ball with the quarterback and out of the underneath center and him 6 yards off the ball and with the fullback, and I think Dalvin Cook's probably going to he's kind of the same way. I think a lot of these running backs aren't fans of running everything out of the gun and having to start from there. I think maybe it's difficult to read that at times, but for that to work, for that play action to work, if you're going to put him under center 75% of the time, the only time I think you went out of the gun is when they were 3rd and long. You got to stretch it out.
Yep.
So I think that's something that they need to look at. But you're walking a really fine line of using Dalvin Cook not enough or using him too much. That's why they're the ones getting paid to figure that out, because I don't know what that fine line is.
I agree with you on maybe I was going a little too much as far as maybe using Dalvin Cook more and not giving the ball to Kirk Cousins. But from what I've seen, though, and what I've heard, Kirk Cousins is, especially in his time in Washington, he was one of the better quarterbacks in terms of play action production. And I think he was able to kind of really do some good things there. I've seen him throw some really good passes out of the play action. But again, these first 2 games, this is why I've been hard on Kirk Cousins. I'm not ready to say he's a bust yet, and that's kind of something we're going to go into a little bit later on here. But I think here's the thing. The Vikings just got to be able to give the ball to Dalvin Cook and find that healthy balance, with Kirk Cousins too. I think this next game against the Raiders is going to be big for him, because I think that they're going to be able to really air it out a little bit more. Because not trying to bash anybody, but the Raiders defense it's not amazing. It's really not. It's not. It's not the Bears defense. So I think that's going to be a big game for the Vikings. Did you have anything you wanted to add, big guy?
Yeah, I had a couple points I wanted to make, especially going back to that. The series that Kirk Cousins threw the pick. I think they should have been a little more strategic in their play calling, sort of down in the red zone, because they had the Packers defense gassed. I mean, if you look at it, Blake Martinez, he was flying all over the field, and I mean he was taking 2 more seconds to get off the ground. He was gassed visibly, and I know other guys were also. So I think if they would have been a little more patient, I think they probably would have cashed in on score there. Now, whether or not Aaron Rodgers goes back and scores also, we'll never know, because that didn't play out that way. But, yeah, that's what I had, about the Packers game, especially that situation, just being a little more strategic in the red zone there.
Yeah. I think it was a big game for the NFC North. The Vikings, I believe it would really help them out. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's only week 2, but, I think it really would help the Vikings get that win, but now they got to come from behind. But then also a couple years ago, they did lose to, who was it, week 2? The Steelers, because Sam Bradford had a bad knee injury or something, and they weren't able to do anything. So, and then they went this long win streak before losing to Carolina and some 1 or 2 other teams. Anyway, let's kind of go to this kicking issues with the Vikings. Did Blair Walsh leave a curse on the Vikings?
It was long before Blair Walsh.
I mean, okay.
I asked when he missed. I was wondering if he was like Gary Anderson's nephew or something like that. It was just, it was unbelievable. And he hasn't had any more success other places. So I don't think that's necessarily a Vikings thing. But if you're going to talk about kicking, you got to go back to probably 1961 with the Vikings. I think it's something that has always been an issue. When they miss a field goal in a game, and my 6-year-old is watching and goes, "Oh my gosh, not again!" A 6-year-old knows that that they don't make field goals. Like, Dad, not again. That says something about their history. But I thought that when they got the Norwegian guy, I mean, I thought that was to trade away a pick like that, they must have thought something of him. But he was awful to watch in preseason. He wasn't even close on some of that. But
Vedvik,
yeah, and if you can't get a Norwegian to do it for, I don't know who else is going to. And then I guess I don't know. I think they probably went with the more reliable, not with he doesn't have a higher ceiling, obviously. No. I think he's on the way down probably in his career. He's not one of those guys that's going to be able to kick till he's 45.
Yeah.
But things change. Moving the extra point back to the 35 has really changed things, I think. Maybe for the better. It makes things a little bit more. You gotta earn it. So it makes things a little bit more interesting. But it kind of amplifies when you don't have a reliable kicker. I think people maybe underestimate a little bit when you get in late in games and it's a 1 or 2 point game and you miss an extra point.
Yeah,
that changes everything. It changes your whole game plan and the way that you execute and things like that. So it's in today's NFL, you got to have a good kicker. And when you don't, it's going to get you more times than not, probably in the end.
And it was funny. I was actually talking about Mike Zimmer. I always watch the post game press conferences.
He hates kickers. He hates kickers with the passion.
It was funny because they always ask him about the kickers, and he's always you can just see his. I always see his face when I close my eyes, and I just laugh because it's just can't take it.
That's the only time I feel bad for kickers is when that question comes up because he does not mince words. I mean, in today's PC everything about players and game, he does not hold back on his kickers. No. And that maybe that has the pressure. But I mean, if you're a professional, pressure is part of the that's something you got to be able to handle. But man,
Bailey's first missed field goal against Green Bay. That shouldn't have been any pressure. Right?
No, definitely not. And that's kind of funny. Daniel Carlson a year ago, it obviously might be tough because it's tough to be in Lambeau, but I'm funny Zimmer quirk in response to that is the next day is like, why'd you cut Daniel Carlson?
He's doing well now.
He is, and that was one thing I was really happy to see because Mr. Field Goal is doing really well in Oakland. They're probably going to play on Sunday, so they are going to play on Sunday, but I think that's going to be really cool to see. Maybe a way to stick it to the Vikings last second. Knock on wood, hopefully not. But I just thought it was funny. It's like, did you watch the game like that? I always just love the way Zimmer responds to those. But no, kicking issues got to get it solved because it is the Vikings, so I guess I can't really be shocked about it, to be honest with you. But that's just how it goes. Aging players' health. This is something that. I'm sorry, Shane. Did you want to say anything?
So what are we going into now?
We're going to go. We want to talk about aging players' health for the Vikings. And I'll kind of continue to let you know what we wrote down here. I thought I sent that to you. My bad. No, aging players' health with the Vikings, and this is kind of an interesting thing I was kind of thinking of in the back of my mind because when they get towards the playoffs, and it kind of came up a couple years ago when they went in 2017 because I felt like the Vikings were a little gassed when they went to the playoffs. Like Everson Griffin, who I think he had like a sack in like the first 8 games or something, and I felt watching him, he didn't have that burst. He didn't have that strength coming out. I think maybe it being overtired or overplayed. I don't know. Because I don't think it was Stephen Weatherly didn't really come on until, Everson Griffin really went out because of his personal health issues. And, I'm glad he's better. I'm glad he's doing a lot better. But, that entire Vikings defensive line, I didn't really see anybody that was, before Stephen Weatherly stepped up. I really didn't see anybody that was really could step up and give them a break. Because even with the defensive tackles, Linval Joseph plays probably close to every snap still, and he's 30, 31, 32. He's pretty old too. So I think the fact now that I can't even say his name, Jermaine Hedabo or something like that. He's like now the second string defensive end behind Everson Griffin. Plays like maybe 12 snaps a game, but he's still a really good. From what I saw in the preseason, he's a good defensive end. He got to the quarterback a couple times. I think he's gonna have to spell Everson Griffin in order to give the Vikings and give Griffin a little bit more rest because Griffin's not young anymore. He ain't no spring chicken. All right, the man he's getting old. It's time. They got to be able to give him something. What did you think about it?
I remember I was thinking of that guy was like Manti Te'o's cousin. I didn't know what he was. I saw his last name. I think they really missed their window with some of those defensive players. 2 years ago when they're so good. I know they melted down obviously in Philadelphia, but NFL players age quick. It's just the way it is. Like we said, bigger, stronger, faster now. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that running backs don't make it, usually too far past 26, 27 years old. But, you look at a guy like Harrison and the way he plays is, all out at all times, which is what you want in a player, obviously. But you wonder how long he's going to be able to do that for, it was the same thing we kind of said with Byron Buxton. He's only got one speed, which is great. It's very, you don't get players like that very often, but kind of have to, pick and choose and know your limitations a little bit, especially if you want him to be healthy. And the one that's been kind of, disappointing for the most part is Xavier Rhodes, I think, and probably for the last year and a half now. There's a point there where he was the best. He was the best, shutdown corner in the NFC at that. I never saw it. I thought he was our best. The cornerback's been an awful position for the Vikings all the way back to '98. But I think that maybe just because they line him up against that everybody's won or what it is, but they paid him big money and he hasn't really played like that. Trey Waynes was like, everybody couldn't. Nobody was more frustrated with Trey than anybody besides Trey Waynes or whatever. He had that game. Was it the Cowboys a couple of years ago? Yeah. Where it was the worst game ever because he ended up getting the pick at the end and he got burned like 3 times or whatever. Mm-hmm. But he's come along. I think he's probably better in a lot of aspects than Rhodes is right now. But so you look at them and you look at our 2 UCLA guys at linebacker and they're not. Same thing, and you hope that you're not missing their window a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Barr and Kendricks have a good, I would say 3 to 4 more years until they're, I would say kind of start to decline a little bit or probably dramatically because, Kendricks is still pretty young. In terms, I think, 26, 27, he's around there. And sometimes those middle linebackers can go for a pretty good amount of time. He's, had a lot of tackles, for a guy that last couple of years, I think 3 straight seasons had 100 tackles.
He's been the leading tackler, yeah.
And then Eric Wilson, too, is another guy I was really impressed with last year, who's still pretty young. Anthony Barr, I think he's got 3 because he was Zimmer's first draft pick. So I think they have to really maybe, I don't want to say gauge his snaps, but with him just getting a big contract, I'm hoping he lives up to it. The first snap of the season, I don't think it could have gone any better for the man. But I know what you mean in aging players' health. Can we kind of just rewind here for a second and really give props to Mike Zimmer for finding Anthony Harris, because he was undrafted out of Virginia, and I think it took him a couple years. He got blocked so bad by Larry Fitzgerald one time, he literally got smushed into the ground. I didn't know that guy was going to make it past the second round of cuts the following year, but we really need to give this guy props because he's put on 15 pounds since he's been in the NFL. He's fast. He had 2 interceptions in week 1, or was it? It was week 1, yeah. And then last week didn't play bad. I think he still rates above a 75 according to Pro Football Focus. And then last year he was ever since Anderson Dejo went out, he was just absolutely just tore it up. Can we just appreciate for a second how since Darren Sharper, I would say, how shore up that defensive backfield has really begun, and especially with Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith, who's one of my favorite players of all time behind Jared Allen. I'm really as a Vikings fan, I've learned maybe the most important thing is one thing, is you really got to be able to soak in the good times. And this is a time where when we had to deal with players like Chris Cook, who got burned more than me making fried eggs or something. He got burned a lot, okay? He got and the Vikings wasted a second-round pick on him. And so to be able to kind of just reminisce in this a little bit, I'm kind of happy because the Vikings defense has been, I would say, top 5, top 3 defense for the past 3 seasons. And yeah, they took a little bit of a step back last year, but I'm really happy with the way things are turning out because, and it's funny you mentioned again, the aging players' health. We don't have a lot. I don't think we have a lot of time left in this. So now we got to enjoy this because I don't think we have a lot of time left because then the Vikings have to go all around again and have to rebuild and, and maybe they'll just trade for some players. I don't know. Maybe we have longer. They have longer than we think. I don't know, but I just want to appreciate how good this defense has been for so long.
I can't get over the fact that you had a Darren Sharper shout out there. That was that might be the first one in history, but yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think probably the biggest one is Daniil Hunter.
Yes.
Probably more so than anybody. And he got paid too this offseason, which I think was the right move, but he's been kind of
like a find. Like a third-round draft pick. He only had like 2 sacks in college, and then he comes back his first year. Once he had like 6 sacks. The next year after that, he has 12 sacks. Doesn't start a game, mind you, in that 16-game season. I don't think he started a game. He was behind B-Rob, bass fisherman. And then he comes back the next year, starts all 16 games, has 7 sacks. I'm like, what the heck's going on? Well, then he goes out and learns some jiu-jitsu and learns how to get, he got 14 and a half sacks last year. And he already has 2 this year. He was a good find, especially in the 3rd round. I couldn't believe that. But yeah, sorry, Shane, did you want to add anything? I know probably not about the Vikings' health.
Keep going.
No. What about the Packers, though? Do you Blake Martinez, it's funny you mentioned him because I actually wanted to I had to bring that up. Is he kind of a guy that do you think he's got a lot of years left? Because he's getting up there too. He's kind of like an Eric Kendricks of the.
He's only 3 years into the league. 3.
Isn't he like 26? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Maybe I don't know, but he's got to be only 3 or 4 years into the league, which puts him right around that 26-year-old range if he went to college for 4 years, sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. He's playing hard. He's playing fast, and realistically, this is really his only 2nd year really playing well for the Packers. Yeah. Last year was kind of his breakout season as a stud tackler. So,
what about Kirk Cousins? I'm going to stand firm. I sat in this chair about when I first got to Winter and was doing the podcast still. I was telling everybody he's not a bust. He's going to come out. He's going to ball out. Okay, to this moment, I have been wrong. Ask my girlfriend. I'm never afraid to admit when I'm wrong. But I don't think he's a bust yet. Too soon. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Jane.
You can't really say he's a bust. Maybe they paid him too much. But if you just look at his stats, he's not doing really any better. Last year was arguably his best season of his career, with the exception of 2015 in Washington. They're pretty comparable.
Yeah.
So, you're really not getting any less than he's ever been, but you're certainly not getting any more than he's ever been. Absolutely. So that's sort of how I feel about it. Is you maybe paid him too much, but he's really not living up to what the Vikings wanted him to do. But he's not his trend has been there for 6 years before he got to the Vikings. So.
What do you think? Is he a bust?
Like I said earlier, I think it's probably a little too. When you pay a guy that much, you'd probably have a lot more. Patience is the right word, but with him than than anybody else. But I think you made a good point. His ceiling was never top 5 anyways. It just so happened that year on the market, he was the best that was on the market, and I think every fan and everybody in the front office said we're quarterback away. Here we were in the NFC title game. We have the best defense in the league. All we got to do is go out and get a quarterback. So I think that was kind of the mindset in that, and maybe they pulled the trigger too fast. I remember was it during the Super Bowl that right after the week of the Super Bowl leading up is when they signed him. I remember being real jazzed about that, but I think maybe you put a little too much stock in him, but you got to have. You got to ride it out. The difference with him and Maurer, giving Maurer all the money, at least Maurer had the safety that he was from Minnesota, so people didn't give up on him completely. But at this point, you just gotta let him do whatever it is he's gonna do.
Yep.
I ride him out because, like I said, over his starting years, he's actually pretty consistent. If you look at his stats, are pretty comparable throughout all those years. But you kind of just hopefully he has hits. Bounces back.
I thought he was kind of more impressive. Like after RG3. Okay, before I say this, when RG3 went down, I think he was kind of the most stable thing for the Redskins. And he could sling it. That was one of the things that really impressed me. A guy that I think he was like a mid to late round pick, and 4th to 7th, something like that. He wasn't very high. And to see a guy kind of ball out like this in the NFL is kind of something that has yet to be seen. Like what about the NFC North though? Because now the Packers are 2-0, the Vikings sit at 1-1, and so I think ties are dumb. Ties should not be a part of football. Yeah. Because now that
pretty much an L, that's how you feel. That's how both teams feel. I'm sure both of them would rather be like, okay, I mean, I guess it's not as worse as a loss, but I'd rather be going home with a win or a loss. Sort of
knowing and how it's going to affect you, because it really does it could have big playoff implications moving forward. But now the Lions, I believe, set at number 2. Vikings and Bears are 3 and 4, and I don't think that's how it's going to stay, because Detroit's not a bad team, but I don't think they're in the level of the Vikings, Bears, or the Packers. And the Bears, in my opinion, are kind of getting exposed a little bit, because what did the Packers do that was so amazing? They made Mitch Trubisky beat him with his arm, and he didn't do that, okay? Tried to make him beat him with his arm, because he didn't do that. But listen, I think this is a 3-way race between those 3 teams, the Vikings, the Bears, and the Packers. The Lions, you never know. Matt Stafford's a good, respectable quarterback. But at the same time, I just think it's between those 3 teams. I think this is a really good loss for the Vikings. I know I hate to say that. I know that saying a loss for your team is kind of like kissing your sister. You just don't do it. But I just think that's good for them, because it kind of makes them realize, okay, especially Kirk Cousins. This is the thing. I know I love Kirk Cousins and him taking accountability and everything, but there's a difference between taking accountability and making a change and actually stepping up, and not only playing for a $28 million contract like everybody's saying, but just be the quarterback that your team needs. You don't need to be anything special. You don't need to throw 45 touchdowns this year. Go out, make some good throws, run the ball, Dalvin Cook, and we'll see you in the playoffs. That's it.
Get the ball into the hands of your stars, Diggs, Thielen, and Cook, and make some things happen. I agree. And I certainly think after week 5 that NFC North could be really interesting. The Packers have 2 tough games coming up in Philadelphia. I mean, not in Philadelphia, but teams in Philadelphia and the Cowboys. I would say the Vikings have some breathing room, maybe if they can hold off Chicago.
Yeah, that'll be tough.
To have a good win streak here and gain some confidence going into the rougher part of their schedule. As far as Chicago goes, I think they're a beatable team.
Defensively, they're tough, though.
They're really tough defensively. Heck yeah, but I mean, they almost lost in Denver.
Yeah.
I mean, Denver's not awful. They didn't look terrible, but
they're not a playoff team.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think about this NFC North? It's competitive now.
It is more so now than it's been in a while, I think. Usually the last decade or so, you kind of have always had a clear winner. Maybe that, sometimes a surprising clear winner, like the Vikings 2 years ago or the Bears last year. I thought going into this that the Bears are probably the most likely to regress of those surprise teams from last year. Sometimes you just kind of catch lightning in a bottle with the new coach and things like that. But, when you got Khalil Mack in there, it's different. Then sometimes you defy logic a little bit. But, yeah, I think it's hard to gauge these things 2 games in any sport. Any sport. The problem, the difference with football as opposed to basketball or baseball or hockey is you still have 162 more. You have 82 more. Here you only have, you only play 16. So the panic button gets pressed a little earlier, quite a bit earlier than other places. I've always been, as long as Rodgers is around, Green Bay's got a shot.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And I feel like he probably has some more reliable folks around him on offense, and he same situation with the Vikings too. If you don't have an offensive line, it really doesn't matter how talented or amazing you are. And I was impressed with the Vikings offensive line week 1. They didn't look great in week 2. Yeah. I know they had somebody out. Who was it? Was it Riley Reef?
Offline.
Okay. Yeah. And offensive lines are like that. I think that the average fan is like, okay, well, he's out, and this person goes to play center. This goes like left guard. That's no big, no big deal. You're an offensive lineman. You should be able to do it. That's hard to do. It's hard to do. Everything is different. Blocking schemes and pulling or this or that. It's hard to do. So when you pull somebody out like that, it does probably, has a bigger effect than I think people realize. But Rodgers might not have got sacked a whole bunch, and Cousins might not have, but they were under pressure most of the day. And And once again, you want your guy to Kirk Cousins is supposed to be, 6 pound, 7 ounce baby Jesus, but if he doesn't have any protection, it doesn't matter. And it's hard to get mad at somebody when they don't have enough time, and he faced that a lot last year where he just didn't have time. Even if Tom Brady doesn't, he's not going to pick you apart when he doesn't have a line. So I think it's going to probably come down to that a little bit offensively at least. But like I said, if Green Bay's line figures some things out and do a nice job, I hate to do it, but you got to give. He's the best quarterback in the
I think
conference.
He's in the NFL.
Yeah,
in the NFL, in my opinion. Talent-wise,
I think he's probably the smartest. Aside from Brady, I think that he's how many games did he go without a pick last year in a row? He doesn't make Brett Favre decisions. He's not. You know what you're going to get, at least some consistency that way. He's not Favre where he's going to have 3 amazing throws, and then just make a silly mistake. He's much more controlled, and that's why I say I think if he can get some consistency on his line, I think he'll do some damage. And you saw that in the first couple possessions the other day, where he did have that time, And even a team like the Vikings, who probably have, upper half. I don't think their secondary is as good as maybe they're given credit for sometimes. I think they're probably top half of the league. But he picked them apart, and it looked pretty easy. And at that point, as a Vikings fan, it's going to be 75-6. We're just going to get drilled. But once that started to collapse a little bit on him, you saw the difference. He wasn't able to do some of those things. So I would put them. I would say probably Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit. That would probably be where I would put them now. That doesn't mean in week 5 or week 6 with injuries or what have you, whether that changes or not. So, someone might land on him wrong and his collarbone or something. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. What about you, Shannon? You would say something?
I think one thing that's going to be important for Green Bay coming up is everyone's kind of hyped about their new defense, which it has shown promise, pressured the quarterback a lot, made Mitch Trubisky throw the ball, which is what they wanted him to do.
Yes.
Kirk Cousins. But I think in Philadelphia and Dallas, it's really going to prove how tough they are, and even more so with Kansas City. And I think that will sort of prove what Green Bay's capable of doing, because I still think their offense is probably just going to continue to get better throughout the season. Assuming there's no major injuries in their key players. So that's sort of I'm sitting. Green Bay is going to be pretty good this year. I think Chicago's beatable by obviously Green Bay, and I think Minnesota too. I think Minnesota can get the job done.
What about key injuries to you got to get going?
Probably here shortly, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
go ahead. You can finish it.
We'll wrap this up. What about the quarterback injuries? Teddy Bridgewater wearing his jersey, because I think it's kind of. I really
talk about Teddy.
Yeah, we've got to talk about Teddy. I'm really excited for Teddy Bridgewater, and he was too. I just wanted the guy to get another chance. I just really wanted him to be able to, because went down, never really got his chance after that, because he was behind a Hall of Famer, so it was understandable. But I just really wanted him to be able to come back. That's all I got to say about it. I'm glad he's getting his opportunity.
Excited / terrified, I think, for him.
Yeah.
When I still remember that day coming across ESPN or whatever, that he'd had the catastrophic injury or whatever. And I remember him coming back. I think he must have got in the last series of a game last year for them, and watching it and just cringing, every time he dropped back, I was, oh my gosh, is he going to be, so you wonder in situations, but at the same time, they wouldn't have him out there. They wouldn't have signed them. They wouldn't give him $7 million to be a backup if they didn't have, the faith that he would be able to stand in there, absorb some of that stuff. He's never going to be a runner. He's never going to be a guy that's going to get outside the pocket and give you a whole lot there. But, I think everybody, that saw him play, everybody from Minnesota, I don't think you'll find anybody that did not like Teddy. They might not have loved everything about his play on the field, but, there wasn't a better guy or a guy that went about his business in a better way, and so you do want him to get another shot like that. And you just really, really hope that he. I know it's the New Orleans, and maybe we get in a situation later in the year where Green Bay or Vikings or somebody's fighting with them for that last spot, especially, if Brees is out, they're not going to go 14-2 with Brees out. So it's hard to, but man, you want to see him do well. Yeah, you really do, and I'd like to see that too. But at the same time, it's still a little bit scary when he gets in those situations, because you do worry about somebody that's had that kind of injury.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about you, Shane? What's your take on it?
I'd like to see Teddy Bridgewater get in there and kind of show everyone what, not just Minnesota fans, but I guess we were all kind of anticipating who's this new guy on the block. What's he going to be like, especially being a fan of the NFC North. But I am sad to see Brees go down, because I texted Colton after their Week 1 win. I was exhilarated. I love watching Brees play, and so I was really sad to see Brees, take that one. But I think it'd be good to see Teddy Bridgewater given the chance over Taysom Hill. I know there was some talk about him maybe starting over him, but
they're not paying him $7.5 million. Like I said, they must have seen something over the last year prior to that gave them that confidence. And I mean, that's not in the NFL. That's not throwaway money. It's not like the major leagues where you can spend $400 million on your roster if you're the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Dodgers. There's a really strict cap, and you have to be really maneuver well for any roster. That's something the Vikings are going to fight with now. Mm-hmm. Really have to fight the next couple of years because of Cousins' contract. So that tells you that they must have seen something in Teddy to put that in him. That's a lot for any backup quarterback. It doesn't matter whether you're coming off an injury or not. That's a pretty good.
I know. I just saw some headlines. Some people arguing that Taysom Hill should start over him, but I don't.
Taysom Hill's a good quarterback, good athlete, just all around athlete. But I think I want to see Teddy. That's my thing. He deserves it. Final thing here, fantasy players to look at. Is it just me? I drafted Patrick Mahomes #1 overall, and I have not regretted that decision by any stretch of the imagination. He's been absolutely a great find. Not even a find, just a steal in the first overall pick for me. My running backs are awful, though. Like, I have a Dalvin Cook on my one team, and then my other team, I got, Latavius Murray, and, I'm trying to pick Matt Bright up because he's been this guy actually told me to pick him up because he's actually been balling out for the 49ers, who are 2-0. Like, where did that come from? But, fantasy players for me to look at. I drafted Odell, and thank God he went off, even though I still lost by 13 points. I'm glad he went off. I needed that, so I didn't lose by 40. But he went off, and obviously a player to watch. But another surprise, I think, that I don't think a lot of people thought, it has to be Dalvin Cook. Obviously he's talented enough to be able to carry somebody, but it's also the fact that, the guy, if he can stay healthy, he's probably going to run for 1,500 yards this year.
We have a group chat or whatever with all the guys in this league, and about 5 minutes into the first game against Atlanta, I said, who's got Dalvin Cook? Because, man, you are going to roll if he stays healthy. Like, he's just one of those guys. He's fun to watch. You hate to make comparisons to Adrian Peterson because Adrian Peterson, there'll never be a runner quite like him again. That type of bruiser that just, put you on his back. But there is some similarities there, at least, I think, mindset-wise, that they want the ball and things like that. But, he's Dalvin Cook's probably a little bit more flashy and some of those things. But there hasn't been one in the Vikings organization since Peterson quite like Cook. And so you really do hope that, Vikings fan or not, you hope that he stays healthy. I think that's the thing. Like, you have your team that you cheer for and you want to win. It's the same thing in baseball, seeing, Yelich go out or whatever, or whoever came out. You hate to see that. You might play them and maybe you see them in the World Series, and that's, you're, as a fan of that team, you're happy that they're not playing, but you want to see the best players play, and you want to see the best players do well. And as much as I have a hard time, saying anything positive about Aaron Rodgers, you want him at his best, because that's good not just for them, but it's good for any team that's playing him. And it's a challenge. You want those kind of challenges. So you want the best players playing their best. That's the funnest thing to watch, I think, in football, whether they're on your fantasy team or they're going up against you or whatever it is. So
absolutely. Shane, anybody sticking out for you for fantasy or not really?
Unfortunately, I didn't get in a league this year. I know my brother, he's really not a sports fan, but he got in a league. So I was sort of talking over some stuff with him. I couldn't believe it. He started Derek Carr over Aaron Rodgers.
Wow.
I didn't get that one. Sort of out about that. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but no, but I think that about wraps it up. This has been a fun show. I really got to thank you again, Kory, for coming on.
No problem.
We'll get you a T-shirt. That's what I promise all the people that come on. You get a free T-shirt. And the design, the logo, I got to say, thanks to this guy, looks great. We really appreciate it. Appreciate it. Shane, yours is coming in the mail. They told me 10 days, but it's already been 15, so I don't know what's going on there. But
okay.
Again, Shane, thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure having you on. Your second time on the podcast. So, I really appreciate you for coming on too, big guy.
Yeah, no problem.
So this is Colton Hall signing off from the Sports Brief podcast. Just again, thanks everybody for joining us and have a good night.